Welcome back to the Gooner Fanzine Arsenal Woman podcast. Great to see so many familiar and new faces on Saturday at the Emirates Stadium. We were selling the Gooner. There was a good little crew of us actually selling both our Champions League souvenir edition and the first issue of the new Women's Super League season. Everyone, well, most people were vouching for both, so they were going for the two for £15 because we were getting rid of the credit card fee of 95p. I think it is if people were buying both, and yeah, it looks amazing. I have to say, I know I edited it, but like the production side and then sort of the printing side, we're particularly pleased with that souvenir edition, which was selling fast, as was our first issue of the new season. So make sure to get your hands on that. We're hoping they'll be on sale sort of in and around the away end or outside the stadium at Dagenham on Friday for Arsenal women's trip to West Ham. But we'll confirm on that. Keep an eye on social media. Izzy, first of all, I didn't get the chance to talk about your lunch at the Emirates because I was very jealous. I mean, I basically spent my whole student loan on mine at club level, but you didn't get the usual sort of early kick-off breakfast.
No, I know. I was quite excited for my early kickoff breakfast, but I realised it wasn't really an early kickoff at 1:30, and I don't think I've done a 1:30 kickoff before. So I went all skipping into the Emirates after seeing you lot saying I'm off for my brunch, and I turned up and it was lasagna. But I have to say it was very good. It was a bit of a flashback to like a school lasagna, but in a good way, kind of a bit nostalgic. Some garlic bread, so that was fantastic. Little surprise, and I enjoyed the fact that Arsenal have swapped their sponsor to Coca-Cola because I was able to have a Coke Zero rather than the usual Pepsi Max. So that was another thing that was a nice start of season surprise.
Oh, I'm more of a Pepsi man, so that's interesting. Yeah, they've changed it around. West Ham on Friday, you don't quite get the luxuries. I haven't actually got a press box seat because of the demand. Now, when I was there last season, there were about five of us, so don't know what that says. I know it's probably the only game on Friday night. Of course, in the Women's Super League, it may well be the same in terms of Premier League action, which is why it's so busy. But really good to see actually the media coverage has sort of gone to that extent and continues to increase. Of course, the interest is there for Arsenal and Women's Super League football. Great to be back at the Emirates. Arsenal against London City Lionesses. Is that a banana skin avoided? I think in the end it's a good result. The scoreline is good. I think you'll take a lot of heart from pretty much everything after Kosovare Asllani scored the penalty. Don't think there's a lot to complain about, to be fair, from Arsenal's performance.
No, it was a great performance. I thought they really offered a lot going forwards, which is maybe something that we've been working on a lot over the past season, and it was something that really enjoyed watching on Saturday. I couldn't believe Olivia Smith. I will talk about the goal, but just in general, just where she was playing in that first half was right in front of the press box, and I hadn't really seen a lot of her in pre-season because she was playing on the other side. So it was brilliant to see her, and I just couldn't believe how good she was, how skilled she was, and I kept turning. I was sitting next to Tom Marr from the halfway line, and I kept thinking, "Oh my gosh, she's so good, isn't she?" And yeah, Emily Fox and her linking up well, and then Alessia Russo's hold up play. I just thought, all in all, it was a really fab performance. And as you said, lots of positives. First 20 minutes, I mean, London City were always going to come out and all guns blazing because it's their first game in the WSL. They're playing at the Emirates. You know, it's probably one of the biggest crowds they'll get this season. So I think we probably were ready for that, and then we dealt with it after that penalty, and we came back firing. So yeah, all in all, brilliant.
Yeah, let's start sort of with Olivia Smith. Art de Roche tweeted saying on that Olivia Smith goal, I'm not actually sure I can remember the last time an Arsenal player, men's or women's, has scored a goal like that at the Emirates off the top of my head. Need more of that willingness to shoot from range as well as the ability, of course. Now, a few people have thrown Frida Maanum versus Bayern Munich in sort of in the replies, and you don't see, especially with the way Arsenal like their wingers to operate, a wonder goal in terms of Arsenal's wingers is usually cutting inside and finding the top corner. But when you're playing on your natural side, it becomes more of a power game. And Smith's ability to sort of come from one side to the other, because she actually sort of started from infield and drifted right even. And then the power to get it into the side netting, almost rather than top corner, the side netting, which is always the hardest shots for the goalkeeper to save. I mean, she absolutely lit up the Emirates, and it's just, this is exactly what she's been brought to do. And as Art says, we were talking about it in the pub afterwards. Why did no one sort of follow her lead? Because no one seemed to shoot from range for the rest of the game. And even though it was 4-1, it felt like it should have been a lot more, but nobody seemed to want to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I know. Perhaps it was a game that Kyra Cooney Cross should have got some minutes because we know she loves to have a go from range, and I'm sure she would have been able to find the net because those were the spaces that were exposed. I mean, I knew Olivia Smith was going to shoot as she was making that run. It's all a bit of a blur, but just being there and you know, you could feel a goal was coming. I don't know if you felt that up in club level, but I think just around the whole stadium, it just felt okay. Something's happening here. Arsenal's coming forward, and Olivia Smith's on the ball, and I'd seen her, you know, dribbling and she's phenomenal going past a couple of players and getting into the space and just the vision to be able to see that that space is exposed. The goalkeeper didn't even try and move to stop it. It was just there was so much power. Yeah, so really impressed with her, and yeah, I don't know why people didn't try and shoot from range. We did have a lot of shots, which was good because sometimes you kind of end up listening to the crowd shouting "shoot" when when Arsenal just pass it around, which was happening a bit in pre-season. But we were a lot more attacking on Saturday, so pleased to see that.
Yeah, well, I'm having a look at the stats on SofaScore. I mean, and they've gone four big chances, four goals for Arsenal. So actually, in terms of shots, it was 20-5. In terms of big chances, all of those were put away. So for me, it was just a little bit more of actually getting into some of those awkward angles in the penalty area and then having a crack. But when you are up in the stands and you're sort of to one half, it can be hard to judge some of those angles. Sometimes players look a little closer to goal than they actually are. But it did become a little bit of a come on, someone have a crack, and especially when you've got a bit more breathing room in the game as well, and you've got these creative players. But that's what Olivia Smith is going to do. Katie Reed, talk to me about your feelings when you saw her name on the team sheet. Because at first I was thinking, is she at right back? That was my first instinct. But of course, Emily Fox was fit and playing. I think a lot of the talk will be about the players who were left out. But on hindsight now, I think you can see exactly why Reed's sort of her capabilities saw her sort of match up really nicely with Izzy Goodwin.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it was quite funny. It might have been on the BBC actually, the lineup they put out, and then they had Katie Reed playing as a front two with Alessia Russo on their graphic. And I was thinking, I know they put the team sheet like that, but you know, she's definitely not a number nine. So that made me laugh. But yeah, I think I worked it out because I know her and Izzy Goodwin have played together at England youth levels, and so they probably have trained against each other a lot of times, and that's something that Katie Reed could use to her advantage in that game, and she really did neutralise Goodwin's threats because she has a lot of pace, and when she was on the ball, I was thinking, gosh, she's quite threatening, but actually Katie Reed was able to stop her every time. I thought she played a really mature game. I was saying that from the off. I actually wrote that in her player rating before the penalty. I said that she was playing maturely, and then she made that mistake. I thought, oh, but she really picked herself back up. I mean, it would be so easy for a young player to let that really affect the rest of their game time and maybe have to come off, you know, after half time because it's just not going as well. But yeah, she really didn't let it phase her, and she just kept playing with that composure and so fab in tight spaces. You think that being that tall, you might not be so good at keeping the ball at your feet and getting out of those tight areas, but she is really good at that. And her height during London City set pieces was brilliant as well. Yeah, I'm really pleased. I don't know what the partnership we'll see going forward will be, but at least we know Katie Reed capable of playing 90 minutes against a strong opposition.
Yeah, 16 goals, I think it was, for Izzy Goodwin, who was the top scorer in the championship last season. Played up front along with Nikita Paris, Kosovari Asllani in the 10. Goodwin, no shots, no successful dribbles. Yeah, the stats are very much indicative of a performance in which she was pretty much shut down by Katie Reed. And, her sort of the penalty you just put down to inexperience, and then the rest of the game you'd look at a very mature footballer. And I did a bit of an analysis piece on Reed, and the fact that Arsenal have sort of quickly sort of moved Cecily Wellesley-Smith through their academy ranks from Sanda from Oxford United, loaned her back there. They're in the third tier. the fact sort of they've given her that professional contract, that was one that sort of surprised me when I got hold of that news. And then that Leicester, because I'd heard Crystal Palace were interested in her in the second division, and then Leicester have given her a loan deal. She's almost as tall as Katie Reid, and I've seen a lot of people commenting on the sort of the height of Arsenal squad with the team photo going out this year, this week, and I think there's a lot of that actually is a little bit of a through the academy, can we increase the height of this side a little bit and make them a bit more proficient? Because I always look at that Chelsea spine. You know, I know Cuthbert's not the tallest in midfield, but the physicality, someone like Myra Ramirez or Aggie Beaver Jones up front, and then someone like Millie Bright in defence. I think if Arsenal are looking to increase the height of the team, you know, because Russo, Blackstenius, etc., they're not small as well. I wonder if that's a little bit of a deliberate ploy and Reed, you know, even if there's maybe other areas of her game that need developing, which, judging by a lot of that performance, probably they're in a good place. Just to have that height and that sort of natural advantage is such a big thing, I think, for a young player coming through any academy.
Yeah, definitely. And Arsenal will have, been developing her for years and knowing that what her potential is. And here is her potential being shown on the big stage, which is fantastic. And yeah, you look at that back line, Steph Catley and Leah Williamson in centre backs, they're not particularly tall. I mean, I think Leah Williamson's probably only about 5'7" or something. So that, you're going to be coming up against strikers who are going to be offering a lot more physically than that. And that's not particularly where our centre back strengths lie. But if we can have other options like Katie Reid and in a couple of seasons, maybe next year, I don't know, Cecily Wellesley Smith, and that's just fantastic. It's just another string to the bow of that Arsenal defence, and it's what's needed. I think a lot of people were calling for Arsenal to sign a centre back over the window, but it's clear that Renee Segers really does trust Katie Reid because she played her in the opening game and she hasn't gone and signed another centre back because Katie Reid is good enough to be that kind of replacement player. So I think it says a lot about where the club's head's at going forward.
Yeah, interesting. I hope this is pretty much public knowledge, but Katie Reid is doing the press conference on Thursday before, or talking to journalists, doing what's called a round table rather than sort of a more formal press conference. But you know, players, that's a little bit suggestive to me. Of course, people want to talk to her about a really good performance on Saturday, but actually, you know, how much of a one-off is this selection? I'm really interested to see because that was my sort of first instinct even after the game. But the more you play well, the more of a run in the side you could get. So West Ham, again, a bit of a physical side. They've got pace in behind. Maybe they will stick with Reed. It'll be really, really interesting to see on Friday night. Freedom Arnhem, Sina Blackstenius. How often do we talk about it? The impact of subs, goals in quick succession, and that lovely build-up play for Chloe Kelly's goal just before half-time. I mean, Alessia Russo, a new contract, and we just continue to take her for granted a little bit because her work in and around the box in those sort of tight spaces is superb. And then Beth Mead, under the radar against a side that were interested in her, comes on and picks up 2 assists. I mean, it was a very good day in front of goal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Alessia Russo, once again, similar to the Euros, people may criticize her for not scoring a goal as a striker, but it's the rest of her play that's just so important. The way she holds the ball up, and she's such a good team player as part of that front line, and it just really works with her. You can see she's comfortable in the side, and the other players trust her, and she trusts them, and it just really works. And I can see why the club would be desperate to hold on to her for another couple of years. So really pleased with that contract extension. And then. Yeah, Beth Mead really silencing her haters, I think, a little bit. That there was a few people, well, not a few, quite a lot of people in the summer saying, that they quite like her to leave the club or they don't see why she's still there. And others saying, well, it's because she's such an impact player. And she showed an impact player again on Saturday. We saw the Champions League final link up again with Mead and Black Sinius coming together to score a goal, which was great. But yeah, just the way she's able to look in and get these assists, I think it's really irreplaceable. She has been a quality player for so many years. And as Renee Segers said in our press conference last week, they want to keep these players around who have been there for, many seasons because they know the history of the club. And I think that that's really important for a player like Mead. And yeah, great to see Black Cinia scoring as well. I think last season, maybe not her best, not the most fantastic scoring record, but in the Champions League final, big goal. I hope her confidence is high. Reasonably good Euros as well. So yeah, I was pleased to see basically everyone starting the season on the right foot.
Mm. Bit of lack of control in the midfield, maybe in the first half. I was looking down at Leah Valti a little bit, thinking, yeah, she might come on and take control of this game. Obviously, lovely reception from the crowd. Mariana Caldente and Kim Little, sort of Arsenal's preferred midfield pair, sort of from the end of last season. Then Victoria Pelova playing in the number 10 role. Look, Kyra Cooney-Cross is going to play a lot of football this season. I mean, it's a little bit frustrating, sort of a lot. People scramble for the panic station sort of after one game for people like her and Lotte Woodburn-Moy. It's a long season. Arsenal are competing across all of the competitions. We're going to see rotation under Renee Slagers, and we're going to have to. And Kyra knows exactly sort of what she needs to do. She gave a really good interview with Art, who I mentioned earlier. But continuing on with Mariana and Kim Little, and Kim is just ridiculous because there was a Scottish guy in front of me and very much enjoying the alcohol trial being able to have it in your seat, and every little swivel of the hips, every bit of skill, just taking it away from two players. He was going absolutely crazy in front of me, which was great. But you have to have something like that to appreciate Kim Little sometimes, and she just keeps going on doing the same thing. And her and Mariana, I'm absolutely fine with that being Arsenal's sort of main midfield pairing.
Yeah, definitely. You're right about Kim Little. I think, I mean, as I wrote in my article in the new Gooner, so grab that if you haven't already. But I wrote a piece about her, and she's so humble and quite a quiet character. I'm sure she's not so much around the squad, but you know what I mean. That I think she does slip under the radar. She's obviously incredibly popular with Arsenal fans, but I think because she's doing that role in the midfield where she's just kind of ticking along and making sure everything's working a bit like a sort of metronome in the middle, that then she doesn't always get kind of the shouts and the praise that maybe she deserves. So yeah, fantastic that you were sitting in front of a behind a Scottish person who was doing that for you, but not that you'd ever not appreciate Kim Little. But yeah, I think she's fab, and 10 more years, Kimmy Little, please. But yeah, I think Cara Cooney Cross is able to control that midfield, maybe a little bit like what you're saying that we might have needed on Saturday. I think that she will play football. She knows that shirt's hers, as you said, and I think she's got qualities that Kim and Mariona can't offer. Maybe some of them closer to what Leah Valti would have offered. And I think I'm really excited. She is one of my favourite players. I can't wait to see what she does. But I think, yeah, people need to realise there's so many games this season. We've got 4 competitions at the moment. She's going to be on that pitch. She's going to be getting minutes, and it's going to be fine. I think Mariona was slightly marked out of the game on Saturday. She was sort of taken care of by Aslani quite a lot of the time. And that meant we didn't see the kind of silky football that maybe we're used to seeing from her. But I'm sure that won't be the case in every match going forward. So I have no doubt that she's going to still be in just as good a form as she was.
Just before we move on to West Ham, thoughts on London City? I mean, a tiny sort of sliver of fans, wasn't it, in the corner of the ground, which was a little bit strange, but also not surprising. It's interesting to see how this sort of fan base grows if it does, alongside the team. Very much played like a side that's just been put together. There's some bright sparks in there. I thought both of their wing backs had a good game. Aslani still, I think, is a fantastic player, but they sort of didn't look any different to just a lower mid-table team in terms of their performance against Arsenal and what they offered, really. I don't think there was quite a clear cohesion. And I mean, it's early stages, but I think there's not been a lot of talk about the manager, and I'm really interested to see how Jocelyn Prasher sort of copes because he's got a lot of work on his hands to get this team together, and sort of how hot on his heels Michelle Kang is going to be if they underperform, I think would be really interesting. But just your overall thoughts on what London City offered, and you'd expect them to improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, I definitely expect them to improve because I mean, I think I said it last week. I was worried they were going to look a bit like just 11 players bunged on a pitch that haven't really played a lot of minutes together. And that is what we saw. But I think we do also have to remember they are the newly promoted side, and they offered more than others newly promoted sides have done in the last couple of seasons. But we'd expect that of them just from the pedigree of their signings. But I do think it was a little bit disappointing. I think once Arsenal realised that the pace of their forwards were able to outpace the London City defence, it was just all guns blazing. It was Arsenal totally ran riot in the London City, in the final third. And I think, yeah, it was disappointing to see. But they've got a lot of players who have a lot of experience in this league, a lot of experience playing as many matches as there are. And I'll be interested to see how they play against Manchester United this weekend, and hopefully they'll learn from some of the mistakes that they made against Arsenal because there were a few. But what a lot! I mean, Jocelyn pressure, like there's so much pressure on him just having Michelle Kang watching all the matches because she was there on Saturday. She'll be there next weekend because it's their first home game. I just can't imagine having someone who's injected that much money and that much pressure to succeed. So it's not an easy task for him, and there's a lot of eyes on that club. But I hope that they do well. But yeah, Arsenal deserve that win on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one for London City, and I think the media coverage sort of fascinates me because it's quite one way a lot of the time, and you can sort of understand why. But I think there needs to be sometimes a little bit more digging sort of into it. It's not all brilliant, essentially, because there has to be a little bit more of how is this fan base going to develop? How do you throw this team together? How does it sort of develop organically? And also the multi-club ownership thing, which I just in my opinion, is not a great thing for football, and it is probably similar for the women's game. And if London City do go on and get into the Champions League, etc., how that then looks, I think I'm a little more sceptical about it. But at the end of the day, if someone's going to invest their money, and sort of their facilities, stadium, all really, really good, and there were fans there, and they were going mad after the first goal. So there's definitely some passionate fans there, and as an independent women's club as well, it's great to see. But yeah, very interesting. It's one of the stories of the season, and Arsenal would just be glad, I think, to have that game out of the way and that potential upset. So West Ham on Friday night. I feel like we did all of our West Ham preview after the pre-season friendly. I mean, it was just a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? But what did you learn about sort of West Ham under Rayan Skinner? They're never an easy opponent, and Arsenal found that out last season in particular.
Yeah, definitely. I think neither side were wanting to give too much away in that preseason game that we've had recently, just because of how close the kind of league match between them is coming up this Friday. And I think the Rian Skinner's building something great there. I'm a fan of what West Ham are doing now. I think having maybe come under quite a lot of criticism for not investing in their women's side enough, they seem to be heading in the right direction now. And we saw that last season with a couple of the results they were managing to get. I always love tuning into them playing against United, Chelsea, City because I thought
Mm.
this is a chance for Arsenal to gain a bit of an advantage if one of these teams drops points, and they are that kind of side that these teams will drop points against. They did lose to Spurs on the weekend after a penalty that Beth England managed to slot home. So that was probably a shame for them and not the way they would have liked to start the campaign. But there's many weeks left, and I think that, yeah, very aggressive, very physical, a lot of pace in behind. We'll see what Arsenal, put up to deal with those issues. But I mean, being able to beat them 2-0 in pre-season is a pretty good signal of which way this match should go. But you just never know with West Ham.
Yeah, I like their attacking threat a lot actually when you watch West Ham. They've tied Rico Ueki down to a new contract. Viva Say's playing a little bit wider than sort of she has earlier in her career. They do have a goalie issue in that Kinga Shamik, I think, was injured in that game against Tottenham, so it looks like they'll have to change their goalkeeper. And Shakira Martinez, I mean, she was fantastic against Arsenal last season. They've added Fionn Morgan as well. As you say, there's been a little bit more investment. Still playing at Dagenham for most of their games, so they haven't had a game at the London Stadium since 2019. It's only the 850 away allocation. Arsenal sold that out in no time whatsoever. So yeah, the Gooner will be there on Friday night. And final bit of news, there's a lot of sort of scraps of news that I've rounded up. The Arsenal under-21s have won 3 from 3 to start their new league campaign. There's a change to the Manchester City game. That's going to be on a Saturday rather than a Friday night. And as we touched on briefly earlier, a new long-term contract for Alessia Russo. I mean, she is the number 9. She's loving her time in North London. This was an easy decision.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you can just tell just by reading the quotes that came out from Claire Wheatley, Renee Slegers, and Alessia herself that it's a relationship that really seems to work and translates to the pitch. And she seems to just be a role model. Renee Slegers described her as, a role model to everyone in the club. And I really liked her announcement video with the young academy
Mm.
girls. they all just really look up to her. She's just, what a face to have at the club to represent Arsenal. She clearly enjoys it as well. So yeah, I can't wait to see how much further she can push herself.
Yeah, she's just sort of a perfect player on and off the pitch, isn't she? She's, very, very down to earth, very easygoing, easy to interview, good on the media side. I think sort of Arsenal and journalists would agree on that, that she's very easy to talk to and probably is one of those who Arsenal like sending out for interviews because they know what they're going to get from her. And then away from the pitch just seems very down to earth. I didn't watch any Love Island. I don't know how her brother did, but I'm sure I saw a lot of good things were said about her brother on Twitter anyway, about his performance on there.
Yeah, I know he was definitely a fan favorite. He didn't find love, unfortunately, but he was already a little bit of a TikTok influencer. This is Giorgio we're talking about. And yeah, he managed to really make a good impression about just being a really nice bloke. So I think he actually did some of the media day interviews for the BBC, interviewed Katie and Caitlin and Alessia. So maybe we'll be seeing a bit more of him within women's football circles. And certainly the other brother is Alessia Russo's agent. So they clearly
Mm.
love working in the sport. So maybe we'll see Giorgio coming in to be a pundit or something. I don't know. But yeah, he was at the Emirates, and I saw a few people making TikToks that they'd seen him on Saturday. So
Yeah,
yeah.
excellent. And atmosphere wise, seemed good. I think going back to the Emirates. I mean, no, the crowd was sort of down a little bit across the WSL. That's interesting to keep an eye on this season because I think for me the kickoff times is just a massive thing, and I'm not going to say issue because I feel for sort of Sky and the broadcasters from their perspective, but I do worry about sort of the impact on attendances.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw someone tweet saying that potentially the attendance for the opening day at Emirates wasn't as high because Arsenal are playing every game there. People aren't panicking about making sure they go to that first one because there's not going to be another one for a few weeks and they don't know if they'll be able to go there. I mean, they can go there week in, week out. So I don't know whether that just means that that's quite a sustainable, crowd size. I'm sure it won't be 38,000, but, not far off it. So that would be a more positive way to look at it, I guess. But yeah, attendance is, I mean, not super, super high, but I think that there hasn't been a huge amount of marketing from all the other clubs. I guess I don't live in those areas, but the only thing I've seen just being around London is pictures of Lucy Bronze everywhere trying to advertise that game at Chelsea. They
Mm.
only end up getting 11,000. But as you said, Friday night kickoff, really difficult to get to for 7 o'clock if people finish work at 5. So yeah, I don't know. I think we'll just see. It'll be a bit of a kind of growing teething problems. I imagine they'll iron it out. But yeah, if it's going to work for broadcast, then it's not going to change.
Yeah, there's some 11:55 kickoffs next month. I know we've got the 2:50 at Lee Sports Village, and there's been no explanation, and even some of the language around it. Arsenal put out when the West Ham tickets went on sale. This game is on Sky Sports Premier League. But if you want to go and watch, here are the tickets. It's like, no, the tickets should be first, and then
Yeah.
it's here's how to watch on TV. We need to be getting this the sort of the right way round. And there just seems to be a lot of sort of trampling. And I spoke to a couple of parents about this actually on Saturday, and that actually there's a real toss up now between these young girls wanting to go and play football or go and watch football, and you need to be able to do both. You need to have these girls inspired by an Alessia Russo on Saturday afternoon, and then they can go and play football the next Saturday morning. You don't want those to be stepping on each other's toes. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's a big thing this season, the attendances and sort of that Euros boost as well, how that all transpires. So interesting to see. But there's a lot of smart people in these positions who know what they're doing. You're missing West Ham, aren't you? But you'll be back for the Villa game at the Emirates. I think probably when you compare it to the men's team, it's a little bit of a nicer start to the season fixture-wise, would you say, before that Manchester City game next month?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great though. That's fantastic. I think it's just Arsenal kind of sometimes needed a little bit of a warm up, as we saw when they played Spurs in pre-season and lost that game. I think and then didn't have a convincing performance against West Ham. So I think it's great that there's a little bit of a warm up before facing this kind of big four teams. So yeah, can't wait to see what kind of foundations they're able to lay and getting those points on the board before heading into the, on paper more difficult fixtures. But as you say, we never know with West Ham with Villa even just back looking back to the end of last season. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I think that Saturday gave a really positive vibe of how the team's going to perform.
Mm. Also next week, the Champions League draw. Very exciting. Qualifiers are tomorrow and a week on Thursday as well. So always one of the best days when you get to sort of plan some of the European trips. Izzy, good to catch up on Saturday. The Tollington, as always, was a hive of activity afterwards, and I'll see you soon.